The object of the ball game seems to have been to keep the heavy rubber ball in motion without using hands or feet. Stone carvings at some sites show ball players with severed human heads dangling from their belts. But no one knows if they depict what actually happened to the losers or illustrate something more symbolic.
The ball was supposed to be a metaphor for the movement of the sun, and by extension also the moon and the stars. And you wanted to make sure that there was regularity in that movement. They thought that if they played the game in the right way and honored the gods in the right way, that they would ensure the agricultural cycle and enable the sun to rise and the rains to come on time, and for there to be a bountiful harvest.
In the sacred world of the Maya, the gods were the source of all life, and only the kings had the power to intervene with them. The gods sustained the physical universe with sun and rain, and expected humans to nourish them in return. The supreme source of that nourishment was blood.
When the Maya wanted to acknowledge the sacredness of the moment or an important event, they would let blood. Blood was the vehicle that carried a quality that they called chulel, which means their soul. It was something that not only permeated human bodies, it permeated buildings, it permeated the trees, the sky, it permeated all things sacred in the world. And when they gave blood, what they were doing was they were activating the chulel. It's like George Lucas's The Force. If you can think of Obi-Wan Kenobi, calling the Force out, or Luke as he guides the plane in the final Death Star battle. That's what the Maya were doing by these rituals, is they were touching what they considered to be the living force of the universe, and it's still here.
On special occasions, the king himself would give blood. This was one of the most sacred rituals in Maya life. After days of fasting and spiritual preparation, the king would pierce his foreskin with a stingray spine and let the blood drip onto paper strips. With this act of sacrifice, a doorway to the gods was opened. When the paper strips were burned, the Maya believed they could see their gods in the rising smoke. Today, the descendants of the ancient Maya still live much like their ancestors did. The myths they remember and the ceremonies they perform are all part of a tradition that the Maya say God gave them at the beginning of time.
Dios per manakahtig aralas manakahtig orkewal manakahtig apas manakahtig ahij nikutushi ka nikutushi wa kanta kuto sa chano kapnamak yarek arutsi yarek arkemilas yarek archotonal yarek kan.
Casimiro Sagahao is a Maya priest who blesses the fields at harvest time.
We are Cachiqueles, direct descendants of the ancient Maya. Our religion is from a long time ago. I learned as a child from the Maya priest. In dreams, we learned from the Maya gods when to plant and when to harvest, when to set the fires, and when to do the corn ceremony.
The Maya passion for ritual was one of the first things Spanish missionaries observed when they arrived in Yucatan almost 500 years ago. When the Catholic Church banned traditional forms of worship, the old ways went underground. Today, the religion the Maya follow is a blend of these two ancient faiths. The Maya have clung tenaciously to many aspects of the old culture. In the highlands of Chiapas and Guatemala, their unique dress not only defines them as Maya, but identifies the particular village where they live. It is said that when a Maya woman puts on her traditional blouse, called a huipil, her head emerges at the very center of a world, woven from dreams, just as the great tree of life emerges from the earth. In the highlands of Chiapas, Mexico, Chip Morris has been working with weavers for 20 years.
The weavers have always said that their designs come from the beginning of the world, meaning the beginning of their culture. When I started looking at the archaeology of the sculptures and the statues, the things that show what the weaving was like, there are a number that are all but identical to the weavings of today. What's in the designs is a map of the Maya world, but not the surface of the earth, not where we are standing now, but it's the dream world. It's that world where the gods are, where the beings that control rain, where Angel, the lightning bolt, lives. There are no trucks, there are no houses on a blouse. It's all images of that sacred universe that creates rain, that creates life, that maintains the world.
In a world where the line between the secular and the sacred is almost imperceptible, everything is more than it seems. Pyramids symbolize sacred mountains where the ancestors dwell. Doors represent the mouths of caves, passageways into the mountain's dangerous underworld. The Maya believed they went to that underworld when they died. They called it Xibalba. It was the place of fright, a watery realm of disease and decay that ordinary people had little hope of escaping. How the Maya treated their dead is being investigated here, at a site 130 miles north of Copan. These are the ruins of a city called Caracol. Once, it was a prosperous administrative center. Today, it is remarkable for the scores of tombs discovered here.
I think we'll leave the rest of this to remove the rocks.
Okay.
Arlen Chase is a pottery expert. Diane Chase is an authority on human bones. They're trying to understand how the Maya thought about death.
We tend to think of things in westernized terms. The Maya were not a Western society. They didn't do anything the way that Europeans do. It's so hard for our own society to understand how the Maya lived. I mean, we don't have dead living with us, every day. We don't put them in a room in our house and maintain them there. Well, the Maya essentially did that in their living groups.
Okay. Oh, this is nice, Arlen. This is real nice. We've definitely got a royal tomb here.
Ordinary people were usually buried under the floors of their houses.
But the vessels are nice and they're in good shape.
The elite were placed in tombs.
This polychrome over here is in better shape on the back than the front side.
What about the bone?
Bone? There's a lot of bone. There are at least 2 individuals whose heads are to the south. They're in pretty good shape. So someone else's legs are up in this corner. It doesn't go with either one of the first 2 individuals. It's not the man and the possible woman. It's somebody different.
It wasn't uncommon for the Maya to bury more than one family member in the same space.
I like to think of it more like a family mausoleum, where Grandpa may have died, and you place him inside first. Grandma dies, you put her inside too. A number of years pass, and maybe the son or daughter dies. You might move Grandpa to the side a little bit, Grandma too, and stick the son in. And a little bit further along, a few more people in the family die, and eventually the mausoleum has quite a lot of bone material inside.
This one's got a ring.
For archaeologists, tombs are like time capsules. The objects buried with the dead sometimes yield precise dates and names.
I can't see what the design is, but it's got those bones in it. Okay?
These help to fill out our picture of how the ancient Maya lived.
In the lab, it should pop out.
And sometimes what they find is simply beautiful. Like the tombs at Caracol, the buildings of Copan contain their share of buried history. But finding it has often been an elusive undertaking. Honduran archaeologist Ricardo Agurcia has been working at Copan since 1978.
My primary interest was finding out what happened to these people. It's something that's part of my heritage, too. It's something that's part of my country. And I grew up, I wasn't very young when I came to these ruins the first time, but it impacted me. And it was a fascinating issue, a question that you were always thinking about. What happened to these people? Who were they? How did they do the things they did?
For the past 4 years, Agurcia has been excavating a temple pyramid that may tell us more about how the people of Copan lived. Temple 16 is a typical royal structure in terms of its construction, and therein lies the archaeologist's challenge. For the Maya, certain spaces were sacred, so they built their temples one on top of another. Workers would collapse the upper levels of an existing structure, encase what was left with heavy fill, and build a new structure around it. As Agurcia's crew remove the fill, they create a labyrinth of tunnels.
Working in tunnels, it tends to be very confusing. You're working like in 3 dimensions, you're going up, down, sideways, in between. And oftentimes you get lost, and you can't really understand what you're looking at.
The flat wall on the left used to be the outer wall of an older temple. Only by following its walls to their ends can Agurcia determine the building's original dimensions.